Shalom, everyone. A few months ago, I did a video, and that video is right here on the screen. Genesis Biblical Facts, Sons of Japhet, Son of Noah, Part 1, Hidden in Plain Sight. And I want to touch on something that's very important that I had to catch from watching the show and reviewing the show. I felt it was a need to come back and look at this very important word that's been overlooked for some time. Now, this show that I'm speaking of, I read from the scriptures. And here in Bereshit or Genesis, the 10th chapter, when we read, and this is the genealogy of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japhet. And the sons were born to them after the flood, the sons of Japhet. And as you read down all the way to the 5th verse, and it reads, "From these the coastland peoples of the nations were separated into their lands, everyone according to his language, according to their clans, into their nations." So now, let's look at some traditional Bibles that's been used or quoted from over the years. Now here in this Schofield, let me show you what it is. The New Schofield Study Bible, Holy Bible, Authorized King James Version. Here in Genesis, the 10th chapter, and the 5th verse, "By these were the borders of the nations, divided in their lands, every one after his tongue, after their families in their nations." Okay, that's the Schofield. Now here in the 1611 edition, this is the original, or copy of the original King James without the J's, or in Old English. And we read here in Genesis or Bereshit, the 10th chapter, the 5th verse, "By these were the isles of the Gentiles, divided in their lands, every one after his tongue, after their families in their nations." So what I want to look at today is this word, Gentiles, and also nations. Here in the New Strong's Exhaustive Concordance of the Bible, we see the word Gentile or Gentiles. You have Gentile here, Well, I want to look it up in the Hebrew. Here, 1471 is the number. So let's go to 1471. And look up this word, gentiles. We see the word goi, from the same root as 1465, in the sense of massing, a foreign nation, hence a Gentile, also a troop of animals, or a flight of locusts, Gentile, heathen, nation, people. But here it says a troop of animals. That's very interesting. So let's look up the word nation. In the Strong's Concordance. Because this is something that's been hidden for a very long time. Here we have nation, 1471. Okay? We have here nations, 1471. We just left 1471, and it says what? Let's read it again. You have goi, Gentile, heathen, nation, people. So for the sake of clarity, let's look at this word also, which is heathen. And it says 1471. So when we go back to 1471, heathen, it still means a troop of animals or a flight of locusts. Gentile, heathen, nation, people. Okay? So these words are extremely important, because to get clarity while reading historical narratives, biblical narratives, you need to know the definition of goi, or Gentile, or heathen, or nation. So I found this very important to bring out about the son of Noah, Japhet, who was part of the original man. The 8 individuals, or the 8 people that came off of the ark: Noah, his wife, Shem, Ham, and Japhet, and their wives, made 8. They were a part of the family we know as Adam, the original man. So there's a caption under this picture that says, DNA analysis reveals that almost all Europeans had dark skin until just 3,000 years ago. Now, I'm not going to sign off with the 3,000 years because no one really knows when this admixture that we're about to read about came about. But for the sake of discussion, we're just looking at this to try and analyze or get an idea as to when this shift actually came about. It says a dramatic shift in human appearance that rewrote what we thought we knew about ancient history. Here we see a caption of how one of the sons of Japhet may have looked when they went into their lands that was given to them in the days of the separation of man. And as they went into the coastlands, we find that Japhet, or the seed of Japhet, still had the woolly hair, and the ruddy skin, the reddish brown skin. But here, we see what's called today in the science community Cheddar Man. And here we can see that Cheddar Man, if you look at his hair and his eyes, they've changed. The same way with these individuals. Now we're dealing with the Gentile. Let's read. The caption says, ancient DNA reveals that many Europeans had dark skin just 3,000 years ago. And as I said before, I won't sign off on that because we really don't know. That means blue eyes and dark skin coexisted in early populations. Light skin evolved much later due to changes in diet and less sun exposure in the northern climates. I'm not signing off with that either. The stereotype of white Europe is actually pretty recent in human history. Here we see another picture of who's called Cheddar Man. And as I said before, when you look at the hair, it's no longer woolly. He's still melanated, but he has blue eyes. This is the origin of the Gentile, the heathen, or the nations. And when we read in the concordance, it said a troop of animals. This is what the eyes and the hair signifies. Now, we read this for ourselves. And when the Gentile teaches that he and she is a mammal, this is exactly what they're talking about. That admixture of the animal gene. So we need to know exactly what history is trying to teach us. They're trying to teach us that all creation was created at the same time. But that's not true. This admixture changed the genetic structure of this Gentile. That changed the way in which mankind was introduced. This is no longer man. This is mankind. The mammal, the Gentile, the heathen, also known as the nations. Here we have photographs of a community in the Solomon Islands. And we see these melanated individuals with natural blonde hair. And different colored eyes in this young male. But as you can see, the texture of the hair you got to understand that this is where the so-called white man got and white woman got their hair from. The blonde hair. This is all natural. And I'm not saying specifically from the Solomon Islands. I'm trying to show that the so-called white man came from melanated individuals. This is who we call the Gentiles. This is their origin. Now take a close look. Now do you see what individuals look like without melanin? Now do you understand where the so-called white man came from? See, when mankind was being originated, we have to understand that in a lot of cases, this didn't want to be brought out. This individual has a straight hair, and he was somewhat melanated, or he was, well, he was melanated, and he's gotten paler. He already has the straight hair, and he's turning pale. So when you lose melanin, individuals turn into what we call white. But in actuality, it's pale. Don't make it complicated. Because you see what you see. This is an example of another group of Gentiles. We've already established the melanin we've already talked about the straight hair, different colored eyes. But these individuals in today's definition of race, they've been reclassified and given names that does not truly reflect their origin. Mankind and womankind, or the mammal. Remember, the hair, and in many cases, the eyes, can tell you the difference between man and mankind. Because once you get to this stage, and you lose melanin, you're at this stage. And this is how we get so-called white people. Or this particular form of the Gentile. We've already looked at man at some point in history, the original man with woolly hair, reddish brown skin tone, called ruddy or Adam, and we've seen Adam being a part of an admixture that gave you straight hair. So in some instances, curly hair or wavy hair, different colored eyes. So this shows that the Gentile comes in many shades. As I said before, you see what you see. So let's review. I asked definition of a Gentile. And here it says Gentile, not Jewish. So that there's no confusion, where it says Gentile, not Jewish, I will not sign off with that, because that's not true. We've already read the true definition of Gentile, and me reading this definition from this source, the AI overview, here where it says, while often seen as outsiders and pagans from Jewish perspective, I am not Jewish, and this is not from coming from me, this is not from a Jewish perspective. The New Testament expands this, and I don't teach in terms of instruction about Jesus or the New Testament. If I ever go into the New Testament, it's to show an example not to confirm the word of the Creator. So I'm reading this to bring a bigger picture. But when you see me read Jesus or New Testament or anything Jewish, I am not advocating any of those. So I had to bring clarity while I'm doing this video so there won't be any confusion. Christianity spread from Jewish into Gentile cultures. So when you see this, remember, Gentile is a social classification. This is what individuals were being called. Gentiles that had a certain look. What is a Gentile in the Bible? In the Bible, a Gentile refers to any person who is not a Jew, originating from the Hebrew goy, nation, people, or Greek ethnos, nations, people, while often seen as outsiders or pagans from the Jewish perspective. The New Testament expands this, revealing God's plan for Gentiles to become part of the covenant community through Jesus Christ, and Paul becoming the apostle to the Gentiles to bring the gospel to them. So what we're witnessing is the civilizing of the Gentile. Let's continue to read. Key aspects of Gentiles in the Bible. Non-Jewish people. The simplest definition is someone outside the Jewish people or the nation of Israel. Right here. Old Testament context often describes as the nations or surrounding tribes that worship other gods, sometimes in opposition to Israel. New Testament significance. Jesus ministered to Gentiles and the early church through figures like Peter and Paul, recognized God's inclusion of Gentiles into the Christian faith, breaking down barriers. See, this is when the Gentile in all their forms begin to come into society, mainstream society. Because you got to understand that the Bible was the go-to document for classifications in a lot of different subjects and a lot of different things that happened in society, which means the Bible had to be the moral standard. So this Gentile was now being recognized, coming into the fabric of society. This is an example of the civilizing of this Gentile. And it went on here in America. This is not what they're telling in the mainstream historical community or biblical community. They want you to think that the Bible came from somewhere else to America. That's not true. This Gentile is being brought into a faith that they were obstructed and completely turned around as a community. So this was important to these Gentiles. And it is still important to these Gentiles today. So when we look at the Gentile and what we just read here in the Bible, a Gentile refers to any person who is not a Jew, originating from the Hebrew goy. Now let's read that again. In the Hebrew goy. This reads different. So if you like the video, subscribe. Push the like button. And with that, I should bid you shalom, peace, and prosperity.